The 90s were home to a lot of hits, weren't they? Let's see, there was SpongeBob, Rugrats, the Pokemon anime, and all of these. But one of the very biggest hits to come out during this time was Tiny Toon Adventures. Tom Ruegger and Steven Spielberg teamed up to create a show about the new generation of Looney Tunes, which are obviously called the Tiny Toons. There were a lot of factors that went into Tiny Toons' success. The animation, the characters, the voice acting, but especially, above all else, the writing. Tiny Toons came out at a time where cartoons were not necessarily the best. Keep in mind, this is the point in animation history where the real Ghostbusters was heralded as the greatest thing ever because it didn't treat kids like idiots. The one show got this recognition. And before you say anything else, yes, I'm sure there were others around this time as well, for example, Ralph Bakshi's Mighty Mouse cartoon. But I'm using that as a singular example, okay? We're good? We're clear? Fine. Once Tiny Toons wrapped up, it only made sense for the crew to stay together and make a new show. But not just a new show that was bigger, better, and far more outrageous. This is where Animaniacs came in, and this blew Tiny Toons out of the water in terms of popularity and arguably quality. There was no real set story to Animaniacs, rather we focused on various different casts of colorful characters, like the Warner siblings going around to different pop culture icons or historical entities and causing mayhem, or just running around the Warner lot like the theme song says. Rita and Runt, a stray cat and dog who love to sing Broadway-style show tunes and are hoping to find a home. The Goodfeathers, who are basically the Goodfellas but birds. And there was also Mindy and Buttons. Their main joke was that their cartoons were always terrible and unfunny. Of course, there were a ton of other groups of characters, but we don't have time to focus on each and every one of them today. That's for someday in the future, but right now we're talking about perhaps the most popular segment in all of Animaniacs, Pinky and the Brain. The story of two lab mice, one a complete idiot and one a total maniacal genius, trying to
take over the world.
Right away, people fell in love with these two. Pinky's idiocy but good intentions combined with Brain's desire for power and total cynicism made these guys something special. They were more than just the Home Alone robber stereotype where one of them was the idiot and one of them was the genius and that was about it. Very early on, the two of them became three-dimensional, well-fleshed-out characters. And the more that happened, the more people liked them. And of course, the more people liked them, the more Warner Brothers executives saw dollar signs in their eyes. With the explosive success of Animaniacs, it only made sense to give one of the casts their own show, and it may as well be the second most popular one, Pinky and the Brain. You can't really give the Warners their own spin-off because Animaniacs is basically their show already. It's like giving Phineas from Phineas and Ferb his own spin-off but calling it just Phineas. I can see it now, lasting 7 episodes, and that's it. Now, don't get me wrong here. I'm not saying the spin-off was bad by any means. On the contrary, the spin-off was actually better than the Pinky and the Brain segments in Animaniacs. They didn't merely take the concepts they had for the 7-minute shorts back on the old show and stretch them out, like say Ren and Stimpy did in Ren and Stimpy Adult Party Cartoon. Instead, this motivated them to tell bigger, grander, more complex stories, and definitely pushing the envelope when it comes to humor. No, the subject of today's video is what happened behind the scenes, and it all started with when Pinky and the Brain got picked up as its own show. It's abundantly clear that the only reason that Pinky and the Brain got their spin-off was because the network wanted more revenue and more viewership. They didn't take time to understand why Pinky and the Brain was popular, they just saw it was popular and wanted more of it. And that leads us to Versus the Network Lesson 102, what happens when the network doesn't understand your show? Throughout its entire run, Pinky and the Brain's spin-off show was at odds with the network. It just wouldn't stop, and it became clear why. The network did not understand why Pinky and the Brain was as big of a hit as it was. Nor did it understand the characters of Pinky and Brain, but we'll get to that soon. Let me ask you this question. When you watch the Roadrunner and Coyote shorts, who here roots for the Coyote? I'm raising my hand, take my word for it, and I assume half of you out there are too. That's because the Roadrunner is not the main character in those shorts. That's the Coyote. It was always said that whenever one of those cartoons was put into production, the main goal was to make people sympathize with the Coyote. We wanted him to win. We wanted him to catch that stupid Roadrunner. He never manages to do it, of course, but that doesn't mean we don't come back again and again hoping that this time it's gonna be different. And that's exactly what Pinky and the Brain was. They are technically two coyotes, and the world is their Roadrunner. Week after week, they constantly come up with these brand new ideas to take over the world, and they get exceedingly more ridiculous and absurd. But through it all, they remain dedicated and determined, never letting anything stop them until Pinky screws it up or Brain has an oversight. Whenever you come into a new episode, you're hoping, okay, this could be the one. This could be the one where Brain succeeds and finally gets what he wants. He'll be happy this time. But it never really happens. Or when it does happen, it gets undone. For some reason, the network, the very people that ran the show, didn't understand this. They thought that having a show about two essentially villainous people, or I guess in this case, lab mice, was completely unfounded. There's no way that a show like that could possibly work, even though it already did. But ignoring that, there's no way it could work. There were constant pushes to make the characters more sympathetic or nice or anything like that, not realizing that that's kind of already what they were. Look at Pinky here. There is no way you could call him evil. He basically goes along with whatever Brain says because, well, what else is he gonna do on a Thursday night? And Brain surprisingly has some good motivation. Don't get me wrong, it probably wouldn't be a good thing if he took over the world, especially because lab mice don't really have long lifespans, but he does it because he wants to improve on humanity's errors. In his mind, he's got the solutions that it takes to make the world a great place full of unity, harmony, and progress. If Warner Brothers wanted these characters to be deeper or more sympathetic or kinder in some way, all they had to do was turn on the TV and watch an episode. They'll see exactly what they wanted. But no, we had to get Pinky and the Brain being wonderful, relatable, happy-go-lucky, smiley characters all the time. But that wasn't enough. Apparently, Pinky and the Brain were not interesting enough on their own. They needed to have sidekicks, and silly neighbors, and those crazy little kooks that they always have to compete against to take over the world. Yeah, this doesn't sound like Pinky and the Brain, does it? It sounds like network jargon. This is probably where the likes of Snowball come in. I never really liked Snowball all too much because I kind of felt that he was just Brain but weaker, which I guess is exactly what the network wanted. Although, now that I think about it, it seems like Snowball was what the network thought that Brain was, but we covered that already. And I'm sure we all know about the famous middle finger that the creators of Pinky and the Brain gave to the network, Pinky and the Brain and Larry, where one day, out of nowhere, some lab mouse named Larry shows up and bam, he's part of their trio. Except there's not supposed to be a trio. In fact, there's not even supposed to be a Larry. It's just Pinky and the Brain, just yin and yang. This was, very unsubtly, a message to the network saying that Pinky and the Brain works because it's Pinky and the Brain. No Larry, no Snowball, no Purple and Brown, no Chester A. Arthur, just Pinky and the Brain. The network got the message and then backed off for about 10 minutes. Apparently, it just got worse and worse to the point where one of the head writers, Peter Hastings, had to leave the company entirely. And if you want to see just how badly Pinky and the Brain was treated by the network, all you have to do is look at Peter Hastings' last episode, You'll Never Eat Food Pellets in This Town Again, which for personal reasons is my favorite episode of the entire show. Again, I don't think it's the best. It's just personally my favorite because of what we're about to discuss. Tell me if this sounds familiar. Pinky and the Brain are trying to do their show as scheduled. They have ideas, they have a plan, and they want to go through with it. But the network cuts in saying that they know how to save the show from what? Honestly, nothing, but they're gonna save it anyways. They retool Pinky and the Brain to the point where it emulates all the other crap that's on TV and has none of the original spark or charm. Then they set out to do their own thing while constantly having the shadow of the network loom over their shoulders. I wonder if this is based off of anything that happened in real life. I have no idea. And somehow, despite how overtly clear this episode was, how attached it was to real life situations, the network not only let this air without any edits, but they didn't pick up on it. They thought it was simply another Pinky and the Brain episode. No matter how many times the episode would basically scream, "Hey, this is your fault, network. Don't mess with us. We already lost one of our head writers. Don't make us lose any more people. We can't afford that." As I'm sure we can all gather, those arguments fell on deaf ears. You know why? Turns out either Peter Hastings knew something that the audience didn't, or he was just some kind of oracle or prophet. Because as it turns out, the episode You'll Never Eat Food Pellets in This Town Again came true in real life. They took Pinky and the Brain out of the lab and into a contemporary setting so it would blend in with all the other shows on at the time. That, and it would give them a colorful side character to bounce off of in each and every episode. In fact, so much so that it would take their focus away from trying to take over the world, and more trying to adapt to their environment and interacting with the sad side character. Already, there are alarm bells going off everywhere. It doesn't have to be all bad though. This could work, maybe, just maybe, if Pinky and the Brain were given, say, an intelligent, or funny, or well-written side character. This show could be a success. Oh no, it's Elmira Duff, the least popular of all the Tiny Toons characters, and for some reason, a character that the network would just not let go. She even appeared in an Animaniacs episode with the Warners. And yeah, we were all so happy to see. I can't even fake it. I can't even fake it. After all this time, after all the letters from fans, don't you think that the network would realize that people don't like Elmira? I guess not, because we got Pinky, Elmira, and the Brain. Personally, I don't think it's quite as bad as everyone says. There are a couple jokes that make me laugh, but yeah, this was the worst possible direction they could have gone. The worst part about it all is that Pinky and the Brain got their show completely removed. No more new episodes, no more anything. This was going to be their new and only show, and the networks constantly advertised it as Pinky and the Brain, but with Elmira thrown in. But that's not what it was. If anything, Elmira was the lead and Pinky and the Brain were her sidekicks. So it was like that episode of Tiny Toons, Grandma's Dead, but with Pinky and the Brain thrown in every so often. Speaking of that episode, apparently that was a backdoor pilot to see if Elmira could have a series of her own. Yeah, I wonder why it didn't take off. Maybe it's because she's extremely annoying and doesn't have any good interactions with any of the characters? I wonder. Okay, maybe she has some good interactions with Montana Max, especially later on, but that's one character. Just one. She does not have any chemistry with Pinky and the Brain. Zero. If you replaced her with some screeching troll monster or a banshee of some kind, the show would be no different. And sad to say, the network won in the end. And that's because, really, the network always wins. The network controls the fate of every show it has. At any given time, you could be deemed irrelevant and you're gone. That's what happened to Pinky and the Brain, solely because the network did not know what made Pinky and the Brain so popular. Instead of listening to the fans or the creative consultants, they felt that through the power of magic chicken bones, they could find this mysterious problem with the show that nobody else had commented on, and then save it from whatever this problem was. So to any show creators out there, when you're gonna pitch a show, whether it be to a streaming service or a TV network or whatever, make sure they get what's gonna make it popular. Make sure that they're on the same page as you. Otherwise, your beloved intellectual property is gonna go the same way as Pinky and the Brain. Beloved by everyone, except the people who had the choice as to whether it lived or died. Well, folks, thanks for watching the video. What do you think of Pinky and the Brain? What did you learn from today's versus the network lesson? Comment below and let me know, because I'm always excited to hear what you guys have to say. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.